Animal cruelty is bad. Most people tend to agree with that until an animal they don't like gets brutalized. So when the people of the ethical treatment of animals, or PETA for short, try to make a stand against animal cruelty, why is it that everyone is so quick to mock and belittle them? I don't know, man, maybe it's because they skinned Winnie the Pooh that tends to get on people's bad sides. Ever since its conception, PETA has constantly sprung controversy by trying to push its pro-vegan message in increasingly more ridiculous ways. Even back in the late 90s, PETA was stewing up issues, starting a campaign giving Happy Meals to kids with photos of dead chickens inside of them. So they just went on making publicity stunt after publicity stunt, and eventually they found their golden goose. You can blame Adobe for a lot of things, and enabling PETA is somehow one of them. Flash games are kinda dead, which is pretty sad. But back in their heyday, whoa. Flash was a great tool for independent game developers with how it could run on practically any PC and be super easily distributed. Pretty much anybody could make a game. PETA is proof. Starting in 2007, PETA decided that the best way to get more people to understand their cause was to make Flash games that would communicate their ideals to the audience. And to make the message more digestible for all audiences, they decided to parody existing popular video games. It only makes sense that the first game they put their grubby little hands on will be Super Mario Bros. So enter Super Chick Sisters. This is a Mario parody involving two Chick sisters, Nugget and Chickette, facing off against Colonel Sanders of KFC fame to save the actress Pamela Anderson. Because she's a member of PETA, did you know that? Pam is trying to expose the cruel practices of KFC to the world, but the Colonel doesn't want that obviously, so he kidnaps her to keep the secret from coming out. Now I'm not old enough to have any sort of familiarity with Pamela Anderson, so this isn't as jarring to see for me as it probably was to Nintendo Andy in 2007, who got really familiar with her pinups. She plays the role of Peach in this game, which translates to she shows up in the very beginning and the very end. Once you beat the game, you unlock a code that lets you play as her, but literally nothing changes. You probably already guessed that this plays like a Mario Bros clone. I mean, what else was it gonna be? Run through levels, jump on those robot things with Colonel Sanders' head on them, and make it to the flagpole at the end. Throughout levels, you'll run into NPCs who will tip you off on the horrible things that KFC does to its chickens, which is like, yeah, I think this is important for people to know, but communicating it in the middle of a level of Super Chick Sisters is a little too tonally inconsistent for any of it to really register. And only about half of the levels in this game actually have corporate animal cruelty theming. The first level takes place just outside KFC, the second level takes place inside it, and the final level is this big industrial slaughterhouse. The levels in between just feel like filler. There's this sewer level that's supposed to be a maze but takes like 10 seconds to complete if you know where to go, and then this jungle level, really clunky platforming. The fact that this game actively wastes your time isn't great, considering that these games have a weird quirk where if you play them for too long, they'll start freezing up until they reach an actually unplayable degree. So I'm running against an invisible timer, and yet I'm stuck fighting with the worst vine climbing mechanics ever invented. After every level, there's a small cutscene showing Mario's adventure trying to save Pamela Anderson before the Chick Sisters, as they got a head start since he broke his wrist playing too much of that Nintendo Wii. Your standard dorkly bits ensues. Mario gets beat up by the people of the ethical treatment of turtles for harassing poor Monarch of Dodging Koopas, and then the Yoshi dishes him because he punches him and dumps him down pits. The final boss is Colonel Sanders in a mech, and all he does is move left and right very slowly. You have to run to the right and jump on his head 5 times and he goes down. With the Colonel down, Pamela Anderson is saved and can expose Kentucky Fried Chicken for what it really is. And also tell everyone to go vegan! Obviously this game is stupid, but I feel it's a decent, respectable attempt at communicating animal cruelty to a wide audience. Aside from some blood, there's not really anything intended to scare the player straight. There are some very brutal descriptions of how KFC mistreats its chickens, but I feel that's kinda necessary for the game's message. The mass production of meat for the fast food industry means that a lot of animal cruelty takes place for the sake of efficiency, so I'm not gonna say that PETA is wrong for wanting to expose the harsh truths for that. I'm saying they're wrong for calling Cooking Mama an animal murderer. Cooking Mama is one of those franchises where I'm acutely aware that it exists, but every time it's mentioned it feels like I'm learning about it for the first time. It's a game about cooking for Mama. But like, her games look really cute, and Cooking Mama is an iconic part of gaming culture. But PETA realized that she eats meat. And that's evil. So now she guts turkeys, probably puts chicks in her mouth and chews on them. I don't know what this game's message is. It's shaming people for cooking dead animals and makes it out to be like desecrating corpses. It's not a commentary on the animal cruelty that goes into getting frozen meat on store shelves, because in the game you're preparing a full Thanksgiving turkey. And it's not a commentary on cooking meals with animal meat because very few people are taking actual turkey corpses out the streets and slicing their necks into 3. Maybe because the minigame doesn't work. The game's just a gore fest meant to disturb the player that doesn't actually say anything other than if you eat animals you're a horrible person, and it does so by demonizing such a pure character like Cooking Mama. And then it dares to hit you with a tofu turkey making segment where nothing bad happens so it's painfully boring. Fun fact, Cooking Mama herself actually responded to this game, and with such a cautious and polite response, of course PETA folded instantly. After dipping their toes into Cooking Mama, which was a mistake they would never make again, PETA realizes they signed the Super Chick Sisters to at least 2 games, so they spun a wheel of fast food restaurants that they should satirize and landed on McDonald's. And that's how we got new Super Chick Sisters. This game follows the same formula as the last one. Pamela Anderson is a vegan, Ronald McDonald kidnaps her, and Nugget and Chickette have to save her while the Mario Brothers lag behind. It's another fairly competent platformer that actually somewhat expands on the last game. The chicks have a ground pound now, which is sure. And there's a broken power-up that's supposed to be a mix between the Fire Flower and Frog Suit, and one level that has admittedly a pretty cool gravity shifting gimmick. But it's also got a segment where it shows you actual footage of chickens in a slaughterhouse, which is pretty uncalled for, and just a dick move knowing that this game is intended for PETA's favorite punching bag, children. Oh, but they have a kid-friendly mode. I don't know what it does, but it sure as hell doesn't remove the McChicken gore. It sucks that PETA reverts back to its scared straight approach at conveying animal rights, since the message for this one is actually pretty level-headed. Sure, everything surrounding it is completely ridiculous, but the game advocates for pressuring McDonald's into choosing more humane ways of slaughtering its animals, which is a far more realistic goal than calling you Adolf Hitler for eating meat products. And then there's a weird jab calling Mario games shovelware as if this isn't just a slightly enhanced version of the first game. Oh yeah, look at that Bowser, oh my god! So, after Super Mario and Cooking Mama, what other beloved children's franchises was PETA going to disgrace? Super Meat Boy? Sure, yeah, Super Meat Boy was pretty popular at the time. It just doesn't match up with anything else PETA parodied before or after. They tend to go after the cuter, child-friendly stuff because Mario being evil is a tragedy.
Is it good for me to destroy the world? That's not funny, you idiot!
But Meat Boy being evil is just another Tuesday. So enter Super Tofu Boy, where the cruel and nefarious Meat Boy is replaced by the pure and noble Tofu Boy. I don't know what form of animal cruelty PETA thought Meat Boy was trying to represent. He's just a guy with no skin, but I guess they thought he was made out of dead chickens or something. If PETA waited a bit, they could have made a game about the Binding of Isaac, since that game has like a dead cat in it or something.
Wait, what's funny? Talking with dementia. He literally has dementia. Like, how is that? That's not funny.
In this game, Meat Boy kidnaps Bandage Girl after she breaks up with him because he got really ugly, I guess, and gets with our hero Tofu Boy. So we have to go through vaguely animal cruelty themed levels a la the source material. Just one teensy tiny difference. You know how Super Meat Boy is one of the best controlling 2D platformers ever? You know how it gives you complete freedom in your movement so everything you do feels deliberate and every mistake can be traced back to your own error? Yeah, but hear me out, what if every action instead felt like sliding on ice? To be fair, this game is very unapologetically based off the original Flash prototype, which is also pretty rough around the edges, and in that regard it's a pretty one-to-one recreation, to the point that it's kind of a level pack for that game. Still controls like garbage, but alright. But since Tofu Boy is based off the prototype of the game is parodying, it just means it's weird as hell. You didn't have to give your game an iPhone aspect ratio just because Eddie McMullet did. You know, the fact that they're going after Meat Boy himself, despite the fact that they could definitely make something out of the first level having squirrels running into saw blades, made me wonder if they even played the game. And Super Tofu Boy is based off of the Newgrounds prototype. Did they even play the game? This game generally feels so bad I couldn't beat it. I got to the Penultimate level where it's revealed that Dr. Fetus pumped Meat Boy full of hormones to make him ugly, which I guess is a parallel to Red Meat since the entire game says statement against it, and then gave up when I saw exactly just what the game wanted me to do. So you may be wondering how Meat Boy's creator Edwin made the Mimic respond to this game. It's his fault that this exists. Apparently Edmund McMillan specifically goaded PETA into making a Meat Boy parody by opening up a bunch of fake accounts on their forums, suggesting for them to make a statement on the game. So he had a field day when Tofu Boy released, even going so far as to make him playable in Super Meat Boy. He's the worst character in the game due to suffering from an iron deficiency and still somehow plays better than the original. After Super Tofu Boy, PETA got a little tired of doing the same thing over and over I guess, because when Super Mario 3D Land came out, they just cranked out Mario Kills Tanuki and made it an auto runner. Where's the hatred, PETA? Where's the vitriol? Don't you want to let rage flow through your heart? Get angry, PETA. Show us how you are when you're angry. Maybe I got a little too enthusiastic there. What you're currently staring at is Pokémon Black and Blue, one of the last 2 parody games that PETA would make. It was a parody on the recently released Pokémon Black and White, but you probably already gathered considering everything on the screen with the exception of Pikachu is from those games. If you thought that Super Chick Sisters was dorkly level, you haven't seen anything yet. This game's entire premise is that Pokémon is animal abuse dogfighting without any actual real world analogy that can be made. It's literally just these characters are actually bad with a PNG of a skinned Oshawott slapped onto the screen. I have a personal beef with this game because when I was a young child, it used to scare the crap out of me. You know that childhood experience where you see Sonic with blood and it ends up traumatizing you for the next 5 years? That's what happened to me with this game. And also Sonic.exe, but that's a different story.
I am God. You might want to brush your teeth there, God.
Obviously, looking back on it now, I can laugh at how over the top everything is. The overworld is filled with random bear traps for God's sake, why are they just laying around? The gameplay loop for this one is just Pokemon, except the roles are reversed, so you're the Pokemon fighting the humans. First is Sharon, who's an alcoholic I guess, and there's Professor Juniper who experiments on Pokemon, then Ghetsis shows up. You may have noticed Pikachu holding this big sign supporting Team Plasma. If you aren't too Pokemonically inclined, Team Plasma are the antagonists of the Black and White games. They operate under the front of a Pokemon Liberation Organization, but the master plan led by Ghetsis is to convince everyone to give up their Pokemon so that nobody can fight back against their world conquest. The game acknowledges that Ghetsis was evil, but still acts like Team Plasma and Soldiers of Christ, despite the fact that the moment their initial plan fails, they pivot to eco-terrorism. So are you paying attention or not, PETA? Make up your damn mind! The final boss is Ash Ketchum, who for whatever reason is a circus ringleader now. After you beat him up, he undergoes a change of heart and learns to support the liberation of Pokemon. What a heartwarming ending. If you open this treasure chest, the game shows you dead animals. And after Pokemon Black and Blue, PETA said, "We're doing a sequel!" And we got Pokemon Red, White, and Blue. I will immediately give this game credit for actually having a message. It's about McDonald's again, but that automatically gives it a more justified existence compared to its predecessor. So in this one, Pikachu ends up finding a portal to the real world, and together with his new Pokemon friends, they dismantle the empire of McDonald's. Grimace is a Pokemon. Yeah, this game is just more of the same, except now the game is soapboxing that, oh, if Licky Licky was real, I wouldn't want to be your friend. And it's like, don't you dare put words into his mouth! This game is so vitriolic that it turns into bad taste. Like, obviously all these games are kinda in bad faith, but none of the others feel like they were made with as much genuine hatred as Red, White, and Blue are. The game starts off with an admittedly justified jab at Pokemon's dual version strategy, and then just gets more and more mean-spirited, calling games bland and monotonous. Once again, you can argue that they're kinda right, but it puts a hole in how PETA has sworn up and down in its earlier games that they're just lighthearted parodies making silly jabs at the source material. At the time of this game's release, they had been getting constant flack regarding their aggressive, overreactive satirization of existing things, and would immediately fold under pressure every time. But I don't think PETA has the right to be this smugly vitriolic as if they're taking a shot at the big guys or whatever. And also there's one opponent who's supposed to be a fat chud redditor based off of PETA's detractors. Actually, they're a weird mix of generic fast food fat kid and a random Reddit strawman, I don't get it. Either way, they fight by DDoSing and ranting, and they make a vegan joke that the writers have definitely heard too many times. Have I mentioned they're obese? Also, PETA is just here in universe, and every time a character talks about them, they have a little swoon text. You guys ever seen that image of the elephant sucking his own dick? The writing for this game is terrible. All the other games are pretty dumb, blunt writing, but in a pretty funny way. But this one is trying to be like holier than thou, it actually sucks. There's nothing funny here. Jigglypuff makes a top percentage joke and my lips don't even curl up an inch. There's one intentionally funny thing here, it's probably just something the poor schmuck code in the game put in because nobody told them what to do with it. For some reason, if you check Miltank and Jigglypuff summary screens, it'll tell you that their original trainers are Dr. Light and Professor Layton for some reason. At least somebody was having fun with this game. I guess I should comment on Grimace. He's a Pokemon mutation in this game apparently. I guess I can commemorate the game for letting me finally fulfill my dream of playing as animal abuse Grimace. The final boss is Ronald McDonald, who's actually kinda cool looking, but he's insanely easy, and then the cutscene right after beating him ends early, but he's unmasked to just be some guy named McDonald's CEO, which may just be one of the worst twists ever. And then we're finally free from Pokemon Red, White, and Blue. What an atrocious game. I'm being such a negative Nancy, but this game doesn't deserve to be complimented. There's nothing good about it. It's the embodiment of why people so vehemently despise PETA. At the very least, the game's a really good ending point, because it's such a good example of why people have such a strong hatred of PETA's parody games. These games just have no substance whatsoever. The only way PETA can think to push a message is to demonize the other side, even if that other side is something stupid and harmless like Cooking Mama, and they're so quick to praise themselves for being the change they want to see in helping animals, when their shelter constantly takes in animals they can't care for and euthanizes over half of them. And maybe this is just me being petty, but it's kinda gross that they proudly target harmless children's media and fill it with sometimes extreme gore. Flash games are more often than not played by children. They run on any computer and don't require any web skills past typing words into Google, and these games are so blatantly gruesome without any sort of disclaimer or warning to get kids to click off. But I'm sure PETA is acutely aware of how approachable the games are to kids, considering their track record of bullying children since they're so impressionable. And they have no spine. They choose to make these big ridiculous gestures, but when there's any semblance of pushback, they either immediately fold or double down in a narcissistic self-praise fest. After Pokemon Red, White, and Blue, PETA would stop making parody games. They still do the occasional original game, but at that point they lose their luster. I don't think Kitten Squad is anywhere near as interesting as a game where Mario is evil and skins raccoon dogs for fur with this insane art. In recent years, PETA has kind of fallen into obscurity. Occasionally we'll see some sort of dumb publicity stunt that will get them in the news for like a week. Most recently at the time of this recording, they paid a visit to an old friend. But nowadays when you think of PETA, not many people think of anything beyond these Flash games. And as much as I dog on them, I have to admit that they do their job. No, I'm not talking about the messages in the games themselves. They're shallow, hypocritical, and borderline nonsense. I'm referring to the fact that I'm making a video on them over a decade later. The fact that these games are still talked about and mocked to this day. The people at PETA are publicity whores, they say it themselves. That's why all of their marketing stunts are ridiculous and extreme. The more eyes are on them, the farther their message will spread. And as their stunts spread, they'll get a ton of detractors who laugh, but along the way they'll eventually scare somebody into becoming vegan. So at the end of the day, the fact that I'm talking about these games, the fact that you're watching me talk about them, means that PETA won. We're playing right into their hands every time we share a game with a friend, even if it's just to mock and belittle it. They have us for absolute fools. But I don't care, cause it's such fucking insane cover art.
Why is Dog with Dementia so funny? Funny? Stop laughing, that's fucked up.